Hey everybody, thank you for pulling into the Palmetto Pit Stop. I'm Tony here with Adam, continuing to break down the Quaker State 400 presented by Walmart as we just finished things up here in Atlanta. A lot of great racing action. Logano takes the win, and this is something, of course, shaking up the playoff field a little bit. Some drama down there on the track in Hotlanta. It wasn't the hottest day, it gets a little bit more comfortable this time of the year, but of course, everything here with the standings and how things are starting to shake out, we're starting to see some drivers emerge as some front runners as we're looking down the stretch.
Yeah, Tony, and I think I owe Joey Logano an apology for counting him out in the first
that's right.
round.
You did, yep.
I said he would be a first round exit, and he goes out, and not just him, but his team just shuts everybody up. Ryan Blaney winning stage 1, Cindric stage 2, and then Logano and the clean sweep of Penske.
Solid, rock solid. And Blaney's looking at the top spot right now, correct?
I believe
For
so.
the playoff standings.
It is. Because Joey Logano is locked in, he is technically number one.
Okay.
But on points, Ryan Blaney would be the first position to not lock in. But, Tony, I wanted to share with you something that I don't know if you know. Maybe listeners would, but Joey Logano, in even-numbered years, a different beast. So, since going to Penske and since the playoff system was introduced in 2014, Joey Logano has made the Final Four in every even-numbered year.
Oh, wow.
I did not know that until, I believe, Monday morning when I was on social media.
Someone just happened to pull up that stat or just look into this. Because, why are we looking into these things? Sometimes you don't even think about it, but I guess that's just a lucky thing for him, I guess, right?
Yeah, he just knows how to... excuse me. He just knows how to turn it on at the right time. He said it. These guys work best. These guys work best under this pressure, and he's showing it. I mean, just to go out there and everyone who's saying he probably didn't deserve to be there or whatever just because of the win and all that, of course, just the system they're in. That's how he got in, was the 5 overtime race at Nashville. He just goes out there and looks like his old self, his 2022 form when he won his second championship. But overall, an interesting race at Atlanta. It was not the chaotic, I don't want to say fast-paced, but just constant passing that we saw.
No, definitely not.
In the spring, in the March race. In the winter. But we had, like I said, a clean sweep by Penske, and just an absolute clinic. And Cindric, fans were thinking he would be a first-round exit, goes out there and gets so many points, puts himself, plus 27 to the cut line going into Watkins Glen this week and Bristol next week. He stays out of trouble. He's moving on, and he's looking like he's in pretty good space.
Yeah, no, they all put a show on out there. I don't know what they put in their water in Atlanta, but yeah, Team Penske, super solid, and they've got some greener pastures potentially ahead, moving on to WGI.
Yeah, and on the complete opposite side, Joe Gibbs Racing. The Toyotas didn't have a great day, aside from Reddick, who came home 6th, and Christopher Bell, oddly enough, the guy we called inconsistent, ending up in a top 5 in that race. But what was going on with Denny Hamlin? That strategy, trying to hang back, he shows up, qualifies terribly, he's way off the pace, and hangs in the back all day and still gets wrapped up in a crash. He thought it would be a wreck fest. It wasn't. And now he's in rough place. He's only 2 points above the cut line.
It's something when you look down the road. He's obviously a seasoned driver. He was trying to play things a little bit more strategically, and this is something that they broke down a lot while we were watching the race. I know we watched it separate, but what they talked about a lot. And just sometimes when you overanalyze things, I get it. He was trying to play that as all right, I'm going to hang back here and just wait for things to try and clear out and navigate in front of me. But you're also risking a luck factor there, and luck was very much not on his side because, as you said before, it was a little bit more of a cleaner race. Fast-paced at times, but nothing too crazy, no big field-clearing wrecks, and, it cost him.
Yeah. He also had that weird the caution that came out towards the end because of the Walmart sign
Yeah,
falling
see,
into the track.
I was gonna say that starting this out because it's funny. Yeah, Quaker State 400, but presented by Walmart, and then their sign blows off and ends up on the track, and it messes up some of the race. So go
Yeah.
figure. Maybe it was strategic. I don't know. Someone loosely tied that sign for a little extra of a marketing ploy. I don't
Little
know.
extra excitement at the
Yeah.
end there. But that is what probably cost Denny Hamlin, because he ends up in that last lap crash when Ross Chastain looks like he maybe caught a tire or something. He's trying to push Daniel Suarez to the win. Daniel Suarez, fantastic day.
Oh yeah, he had a great run in that
Started
race.
deep in the field. I believe he started 30th, finishing second, almost sweeping the year. Daniel Suarez and Trackhouse finding some of that speed that they might have been missing throughout the year. But Daniel Suarez looks like he could be a dark horse guy to go a few rounds in. But Ross Chastain, gotta love that guy as a teammate. I don't think there's anybody you could look for to be a better teammate, except maybe Ryan Blaney, who pushed Joey Logano to the win.
Certainly did.
But Ross Chastain doing everything he could, putting his car on the line there, and ultimately putting himself, or just getting, losing control of the car and hitting the wall, and that caused the crash with Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, and the midfield, the mid to deep field there. I just don't understand this. I know he's the professional, and he's such a great super speedway racer or drafting track racer, but with a guy who's been chasing a championship, I don't understand the way you just sit down and plan out, yeah, we're just going to go for an okay finish in the first round of the playoffs. Especially when you just lost the bonus points and the win, essentially. Like, you keep the trophy, but you don't keep the win points from Bristol in the spring. For Denny Hamlin to just go out there and be like, we'll be all right, because anything can happen in these playoffs. And they did for him. Now just 2 points above the cut line. I know it's easy to criticize in retrospect, but just not something I expected out of Denny.
No, definitely not. And it was very uncharacteristic of him. You know, everything getting down to the nitty gritty at the end of the race, and him just hanging back. You're waiting for him to at some point make a move, and just never did. And it really allowed for things to remain unshuffled up at the front. A couple guys maybe made their way up or made their way back, some unexpected parts of the race, but no, yeah, definitely not expecting him to finish that far back, especially as he has the opportunity to try and claim his first ever championship. And not a good start for him, but a fantastic race for some other teams.
Yeah, and we keep going back to Penske, but Blaney, I picked him to win the championship, and Atlanta kind of solidified that for me. His car, I hope that Lionel makes a die cast of that thing, because it was literally held together by duct tape. That was beautiful. Seeing how he pulled that home, I believe that it was to a third place finish, but just incredible racing by Penske. We went into the first half of this season wondering when Ford would win, and now you have a Ford team just completely dominate in the only way they really could to win all three stages, win the race, and now all of your guys are, barring some awful crashes that wipe them out early, maybe like a Darlington incident for Ryan Blaney, they're all looking like they're in good position to at least get through to the round of 8 at the moment.
Oh, yeah. With that performance in Atlanta, just off to a very hot start. And, this is something that's going to continue to help position yourselves down the road. You got the big road course now coming up with WGI. Some guys are obviously a little bit more skilled at that, but always nice to get that start. You don't have to be climbing a mountain, if you will, as you look down the road. And having that just a little bit of a jump start, it's only going to help ease the pain and cause you to take less risks going forward, which of course is going to help lessen your chances of getting in a wreck down the stretch.
Yeah, and these guys, excuse me, these guys can get it done. Joey Logano has won on Watkins Glen before. Austin Cindric looks like he can at least stay towards the front in points positions on these road courses as well. The racing at Atlanta was a little interesting. It wasn't what we were used to seeing with the drafting, of course, like we mentioned earlier. It seemed like these cars, and what the drivers were saying is that they were battling their cars a lot, like just the handling. I listened to Dale Jr. talk about it, and he's saying that there's not a far off chance that when this as Atlanta wears down a lot more, we could get back to how old Atlanta was, which is obviously not the drafting track. It was just an wide open racetrack. And it really does. I really does.
It's all right, man.
I really do hope it does go back to that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, old Atlanta, as much as I love new Atlanta, old Atlanta has created some incredible moments in the sports history. Of course, you have Dale Earnhardt beating Labonte in 2000, and then Kevin Harvick in Earnhardt's car the next year, beating out Jeff Gordon. And growing up, just seeing that track, it was so iconic. Always going to Atlanta on the schedule, and in those old racing games, Atlanta's always a favorite. So it would be great to see something like that happen. I don't know. I'm no expert on how that works. I've never built a race car or a racetrack, so a little out of my depth of field there. But if that's how things go, and NASCAR ends up bringing a different package to New Atlanta next year, it could be interesting to see what kind of race we're in for.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's going to be something that, and it's just a great track. They always seem to have, some very tight and very exciting races there. This one, maybe not the highest on the list, but still fantastic. And, some problems for some guys early on. Obviously, not everyone finished the race. Going through the list here, got Gregson, did not finish, of course. Got Martin Truex, Buescher, Briscoe, and Mr. Checkers, or Wreckers, as you know him.
Yeah,
Larson.
That was brutal.
It was very brutal.
I did not like how that crash looked.
No.
I don't like to assume the worst in crashes, but seeing how fast he lost control of that car, I was maybe I was just a little scarred from all the flips we've had in the last month, but that looked very similar to Michael McDowell's flip at Texas in 2008, where he just loses the car, hits the wall head on at 180, and just started barrel rolling. And excuse me, my throat is closing up on me.
Need some water here, man. We can't afford many things in this studio right now. Anyway.
I didn't like seeing that car just lose itself, because we didn't see that the rest of the day. No one else had their car just get away from them like that. And awful for Briscoe coming off a Southern 500. He just can't see in the smoke. Just drills the back of Kyle Larson's car. And then that could be his chase, it could be his chase. Depending on how things play out, that could be the ending of SHR's playoff run, assuming they don't pull out a victory or some dominant races at Watkins Glen and Bristol with a little help from deep in the field, the other playoff drivers. But Larson, I think, will be fine, but just that crash, that was terrifying.
Oh, yeah, and when you go through tough things like that early in a race, whether you love a driver or not, you don't want to see that happen to anybody, and a tough out early on there as we keep going down the road. And you may have heard in our last podcast, but if you do happen to hear sirens in the background, we live right down the street from a fire station. Anyway, going back to Mr. Larson, yeah, glad he's all right. But, as you look down the road, there's going to be, plenty of opportunities for him to rectify the situation. He's a fantastic driver, great track record, and, I wouldn't be surprised for him to get right back on track as you look on. As we've seen throughout many times of the year, he's always up there. Checkers or Wreckers call him that for a reason, because he's up there with the best of them. Takes a little bit more risks, seems to go through some of these issues, but also has a lot of wins and is up near the top 3 very often.
Yeah, that was a huge playoff blow too, because he fell to 10th in points. So
yeah, it was a good fallback.
Yeah, it's a good thing he had all those points from in the year, because that could have been even worse than Denny Hamlin's day. Denny Hamlin's was kind of a, shoot yourself in the foot. That was just a car got away from him for whatever reason. And Larson, oddly enough, as great of a driver as he is, this new Atlanta setup has not been good to him. I believe in that 6th race, he has finished 1. It's not been great to him. He's DNF'd 5 times on New Atlanta. This one, obviously, just no fault of his own. A car just losing control like that when His teammate Chase Elliott mentioned these guys were basically on the edge of being so loose and trying to just maintain control of their cars. So I don't anticipate that having any sort of impact on his playoff performance. I think he's just going to get right back to it. He's had some hard hits over the years. You don't like seeing drivers take it, but he's a guy who's probably just going to pull him up, he'll brush it off and get right back out there. And
dust off the shoulders. He'll probably be fine.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt. Kyle Larson, a tough hit. Really glad that you saw him just hop right out of the car, especially in these Gen 7s where you had Alex Bowman miss time for concussions. Kurt Busch's career basically ended by a concussion off of at least they looked at much smaller hits at Pocono and Alex Bowman's crash as well. So for Kyle Larson to get back out to it, and not only that, he gets a little good news to make up for that. He announced, along with Rick Hendrick, that he is going to again attempt the double next year. So he'll be going for the Indy 500 and the Coke 600 in the same day, double duty, as it's called. Not the best finish to that this year, as the rain really had it out for him Memorial Day weekend, where he had the Indianapolis 500 delayed, had to miss the start of the race, Justin Allgaier racing in his place, and then by the time he gets there, the rain delay cancels the rest of the race, and Christopher Bell ended up winning. But as a Tony Stewart fan, he's the only guy who has completed all 1,100 miles of the double. I will be rooting for Kyle Larson to do it, but at the same time, I'm like, maybe a lap down. Just so Tony Stewart's the only guy with 1,100 miles. He joins Kurt Busch, Robbie Gordon, Mario Andretti as well as the drivers to attempt. Kurt Busch was actually in good position when he attempted his before his engine let go in the Coke 600. And Hendrick, interestingly enough, has said, Rick Hendrick made it very clear, the NASCAR race, the Coke 600, is going to be their priority. So if there's rain that will delay the Indy 500, they're getting him to Charlotte. If he said is like, I don't care if Kyle Larson's leading the race, we're yanking him from the car and we're getting to Charlotte. So I think that's an interesting commitment, especially with what happened this year, where he obviously missed the Coke 600 to race in Indy. But they'll have, I believe, Tony Kanaan on standby. Yep, Tony Kanaan on standby if they need to yank Kyle. I hope weather doesn't have an impact on him. It's great for the world of NASCAR to have that huge storyline going in. That was all the talk for the Indy 500 was basically Kyle Larson, and here's the rest of the Indy drivers.
Right, honestly, though.
But that week leading up to it was a lot of good, positive press for NASCAR. And I feel like NASCAR I don't think they would do any sort of negative punishment if they ended up having to miss the Coke 600 again. But I imagined the body was like, hey, could you not do that next time? Because they took a little bit to grant Kyle Larson that waiver. And I imagine part of that was talking to Rick and being like, listen, I know you want to do this great thing, and it's great that he wants to. Like I said, I'm fully supporting his... I'm going to be rooting for him in the Indy 500. But I feel like NASCAR might have had a little bit of a problem with that. Not enough to have any sort of negative... what's the word I'm looking for?
Connotation?
Yeah, negative reaction maybe. Like officially, like I'm sure the officials had their own opinion about it, but as like an official body, like a sanctioning body, that they have, should we just set the precedent that drivers should be able to skip races for bigger events? Like if Denny Hamlin for some reason wanted to go race in Monaco on that same day, that'd be, you're just kind of setting it out there. But I think Hendrick especially and Kyle Larson, they know where their priorities lie. I'm gonna root for Kyle Larson. Just maybe one lap down, so Tony Stewart's the only guy with that 1,100 mark.
All right, we shall see as we move on forward. But Moving past Atlanta, of course, we have a lot to break down again. The playoff field has been shuffled, new rankings set, and WGI is what we're looking at now as we approach the upcoming weekend. And, a lot of hype up there in the good old southern tier of New York. We know it well. We lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah, Watkins Glen was the first racetrack I went to after a long break from the sport, basically. I mean, I would watch the races here and there, at least the crown jewels. But going to Watkins Glen, that was in 2021. They missed the 2020 race because of COVID. So getting to go to that race after the shutdown forced NASCAR out of that racetrack for a year. It was cool. Everyone was there. Everyone there was super friendly. I could not find a negative interaction with a fan. Everyone was super friendly.
I was going to say, you got to, because we used to work, he did, in television up there, and you got to work the event, correct?
I did. I got to work the event. It was a long shift, but it flew by. I worked some long days that week, and I had no complaints other than... No, I had no complaints, actually. That was great. The being in the media center, that was where I was introduced to the fact that they provide some good food.
Yes.
Where I was not aware of that to that point. I thought it was just there's a food stand here. I'll buy, a hot dog or something along.
Like a little, like some typical concession stand food.
No, yeah, and just go in there and it's like, oh, if you're hungry in the media center or in the cafeteria, they have food. It's a nice media center too.
WGI's is nice.
Yeah, it's like 2 stories, maybe 3. I think it's 2. But the cafeteria had some great roasted potatoes in there, some great cookies and ice cream too. It was a great place. So like I said, I stayed there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all 3 days, and pretty much there from before sunrise to after dark. So a lot of fun. Love Watkins Glen. Biggest regret, one of the biggest regrets of moving down south is those tracks up north. I love them.
Yeah, it's definitely things to be missed. You grew up at Pocono, WGI was really cool, and unique in that aspect. It truly is a big icon up there. Watkins Glen is gorgeous. You got the Finger Lakes, you have all the gorge trails and waterfalls, but then, you go up the hill a little bit and you see WGI, and it really is a spectacle to see because literally all around it is just a whole lot of nothing. There's a lot of fields, a lot of farms, definitely some spots up there in that part of the southern tier of New York where there's more crops and cows than there are people.
Yeah, and possibly even more than crops and cows. Possibly more wineries, which was...
Oh, yeah. Yes. Loved it up there. Yes, a lot of people go up for the wine tours, no doubt about it.
Yeah, good old wine country. I loved it up there. That was a lot of fun. Watkins Glen was... Growing up, it was my favorite road course on the schedule. Granted, at that point, they were 2. It was that in Sonoma. And getting to go there and seeing just how beautiful Watkins Glen, the town... It's not quite a town, not quite a city...
I think it's a town. I think it's considered a town. It's just, small. So their population's technically only a few thousand people.
Yeah, so that town was great. A lot of good places there, and then just going up that hill towards the Finger Lakes. All those wineries on the lake. Absolutely, whenever you get to go to Watkins Glen, imagine at this time of year, it's probably freezing now, though.
It's not too bad. No, the fall's peak time. You want to go in the fall.
It's probably beautiful.
That's when you get everything to change. Now, when you get towards the holidays, and then January and February up there are quite brutal. Especially if you're someone that's only ever lived in the South and you haven't really made too many treks up that way. It is a brutal part of New York when you get into the upstate. Even though it's just the southern tier, nothing too much southern about it. It gets cold.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great. Would love to go back if for nothing more outside of the racetrack, the food.
Yeah, no, it's a good place. It is a very good place to visit. Very far from big city living, but it still has a lot of its own charm to offer.
Absolutely. But looking to Watkins Glen, the race this weekend, we got some interesting drivers on the cutoff already. We mentioned Denny Hamlin being just above the cutoff at +2 and Larson
falling back
+15. Yeah, he thankfully he's decent at road courses. He just needs to have some luck on his side. He didn't at Sonoma when I think that was a second lap his engine blew up. So gonna need a little bit more than just 2 laps out of Denny Hamlin if he wants to stay above this cut line. Ty Gibbs and Brad Keselowski tied with the tiebreaker, I believe at the moment going to Ty Gibbs. But Keselowski, Harrison Burton, Martin Truex Jr., and of course we mentioned Chase Briscoe. They are on the outside looking in. Ty Gibbs, I thought, was an interesting one because Ty Gibbs is like the one of the faces of consistency, it seems, and just not able to get it done, or at least get it a better finish out of Atlanta, finishing 18th. But it's an interesting bubble right now. Even Daniel Suarez, the day he had, he's 22 to the good, but still just in ninth. So the battle is going to really come down to, I believe, Bristol is your traditional racetrack. Of course, it's the last great Coliseum, as they call it, but you're going to have your more everyday oval racers doing really well there. The road course in the first round this year is going to be a real interesting point when these drivers start to spread themselves apart. I think you'll see your Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson kind of get their points back, and you'll see guys who aren't great on the road courses start to slip, and I think that's where you're going to end up finding Briscoe and Burton at the very least on the outside looking in. A lot of these guys in the playoffs right now, they can probably handle themselves. Joey Logano's won there before. Chase Elliott he was expected to win last year before that strategy took him out of contention. He has Hendrick. I had another interesting stat off of social media. They haven't lost a Watkins Glen race since 2017.
Oh wow!
Martin Truex Jr. when he was still with Furniture Row, he won in 2017, and since then it was 2018 Chase Elliott, 2019 Chase Elliott.
He's good there.
As we mentioned, no race in 2020 because of COVID. Kyle Larson in 2021, that was the race I attended. Kyle Larson in 2022, and then last year, William Byron. So
at least a little different.
Yeah, so yeah. a little mix up there. But if you're a man of patterns, you're probably putting all your money on Alex Bowman just to finish off the cycle of the drivers for Hendrick right now. But
just off of vibes.
Just off of vibes.
Just going
pure
with vibes.
Vibe, right?
That's it.
Before we go into how the race is looking and all that, big favorite driver of mine is coming back for one weekend for 2311. Good old Juan Pablo Montoya. I love that man as a driver, one of the best drivers of our generation, racing IndyCar, Formula One, and of course getting a few wins in NASCAR during his short career here, or career in the sport.
But still a recognizable name.
Of course, everybody knows him. It's a shame that NASCAR fans will know him mostly for the jet dryer, but fans of motorsports will know just how talented that man is. He's incredible, truly, truly incredible as a driver. But he'll be driving the number 50 number 50 Mobile One, not Formula One, Toyota for 2311. Mr. Shane Van Gisbergen, he's also going to be starting this weekend, so could look for him. He's already won Chicago. He's dominated the road courses in Xfinity. He was looking like he was shaping up for a potential repeat at Chicago before he had that crash this year. So you could look for him, maybe trying to impress his new bosses at why can't I remember their name? Trackhouse. Thank you. I kept wanting to say Furniture Row.
No, and that's such. It's just in his wheelhouse. Like, from getting to understand him more as a driver and just getting more and more into the sport personally over the past couple of years. Again, he is really fun to watch on any type of road courses. He loves the twists and the turns.
Yeah, it's his bread and butter. I personally. I remember the open wheel invasion back because of Tony Stewart's success coming over from open wheel cars and having the likes of Juan Pablo Montoya, AJ Allmendinger, those guys coming in with their open wheel success and coming into NASCAR winning a race here and there. I would love to see a second version of the open wheel invasion, or even just foreign driver invasion. Like we had Shane Van Gisbergen, who's from the supercars down in Australia and New Zealand. We have other drivers. I think we've seen Kimi Räikkönen a few years back. a few other Formula One drivers whose names are escaping me right now, and I feel a little ashamed in that. But I'm excited to see Juan Pablo. It's been so long, hasn't raced in NASCAR since 2014. Interesting to see him come back for 2311, it feels, since he did drive last in Indy. I believe he swapped from Cup to Indy to drive for Penske. So it would have been interesting to see a fourth Penske car out there. But still, any way to get him on the track. I can't wait to see him again.
It's going to be something that's really enticing, really exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Just a little bit of a change up from these fast tracks, when we're talking about more speedways. I definitely like the road courses. You don't get too many of them, so just between some of the narratives that we have with some of these drivers, who's going to be coming out on top, who's not, and if it's going to be to the point of actually what we expect. It's the playoffs. A lot of different things can happen. A lot of different energies play out. So we shall see as we get down to it.
Yeah, and things things might look a little different because Goodyear, they're bringing in a different tire for this race, and they're predicting about on older tires a fall off of about 2 to 5 seconds on lap time. So that could be an interesting strategy. We've seen tires be an issue, not so much an issue, but they have been a huge part of strategy and results. We had that race, the spring race at Bristol, where tires were falling apart in a good way. We saw the fall off incredibly, and then of course the race at Richmond that turned into such a great race for strategy, where you saw Daniel Suarez rocketing through the field just because he was the only one on reds.
It's something though, like just the fact that was a huge narrative of that race and how they played it into the broadcast. It really just adds something else to watch out for, another talking point as you go into the race, and it just helps you appreciate how. It's not even just about the driver and their car. It's the condition it's in, the tires, and just how important that it is that pit crews have that speed. I just feel like it's something as a fan you can get lost in sometimes. You just expect, oh yeah, they're hitting the pits, getting in, getting out. But when you could shave off a couple seconds, it could be what makes or breaks a win for you.
It really could. And another thing that could make or break a win is that they've had these rumble strips through the bus stop and through some of the turns that they're swapping out for. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but they're these weird rumble pads almost.
All right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how things are. I'm glad they changed it out because earlier in the year they installed them and it looks like they were little pyramids, which, a car hitting that at whatever speed, they're going to be sent airborne. And we've seen a lot of issues in the past with the Indy Roval, with the curbing coming up. So hopefully this will be a non-storyline in a week, I'm hoping. But as for the outlook of the race, I'm excited to see how these tires, how they work out. Kind of upset that the stage brakes are going to be in there because they usually take them out for the road courses, but they haven't this year. So it sucks that we're not going to see strategy play as much of a role as it could. But still, going on to the predictions that we have not hit on once yet. The current favorite, I'm going to make my first pick. And I'm going to do these in 3 different tiers. I haven't done this yet. But I'm just going to call this one the safe tier. 6-1 odds, Kyle Larson. How do you take him out of the equation at a road course? Already won Sonoma this year. He's won twice already. Give me Kyle Larson as a favorite.
He's going to be hungry.
He is after last week. I wouldn't put it past him. Second, which I would call the I would call the wild card. My goodness. The wild card, not so much of a wild card. A lot of these are now going to be just playoff drivers. Daniel Suarez. Keep an eye out on him. I think he's picked it up since the summer. Especially that Richmond race. It looked like he figured things out. Of course, a great race last week. And he has that win at Sonoma as his first career win. Watkins Glen, I think he can get it done. But to make it real fun, and since I haven't got a pick already, I might as well just keep messing with my 0% accuracy. I'm calling this my Hail Mary pick. Juan Pablo Montoya gets his first win in NASCAR.
Why not?
Gets his 3rd career win in NASCAR. He's driving for 2311. We've seen the speed that they have. Bubba Wallace being consistent. Tyler Reddick, of course, regular season champion, looking fantastic. He has 2 road course wins already, Sonoma, and has 1 at Watkins Glen. He should have had more wins on ovals, but that doesn't matter now. I think my Hail Mary pick is, like I said, I've already ruined my batting average in this in this segment. Juan Pablo Montoya, Hail Mary. If we see that 50 Toyota, the Mobile One Toyota in Victory Lane, it'll feel like I'm 10 again. That would be amazing. I would love to see Juan Pablo come back for one race, win, and then be like, I'm good. See you.
And that would be really fun, just to add to the narrative, add to just the nostalgia factor of something such as that. But Juan Pablo Montoya, definitely a good wild card pick. Going into mine, the same first one as yours, Larson. I think he will have a bounce back race. He is going to be very much in the way of setting his sights on wanting to get a win or wanting to really be up there with that disastrous attempt at a race into Atlanta. You know, these things happen. You get some bad luck. And, some guys just have a bad day. It doesn't matter how good of a driver you are sometimes. You just can have a bad day. But I think this is going to be a good day for Mr. Larson. Now, that's going to be number one, the reasonable safety tier pick. But as we go down the road a bit, my second one is going to be Bell. He has just been hanging around with that consistency. He does well enough at road courses. I do like the odds I see from him. I like the car that he's anticipated to have. I think that he will be hanging in there and is another good second tier pick for this race. So Larson, Bell, I got up there. And then for my wild card, it's who, of course, we've been talking about a little bit before, Van Gisbergen. He's still going to be more up to the top, I believe. I can't remember the exact Vegas odds, but I think he is still top 3 or top 4 for this race.
I saw that too.
But just because of, him still being back a little bit more of the pack with a lot of these races that we've looked at, I know he is better at road courses, but he would be my third pick, the one outside of the playoff right now. And pressing Trackhouse Racing would be my wild card slot in there. But my other two, as a reminder, Larson, Bell, and then definitely want to keep eyes on Mr. Van Gisbergen.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that he'll be a full-time NASCAR driver next year because you already have this amassment of talent, and then you just throw in some guys like, oh yeah, here's one of the best supercar racers driving right now, and now he's right in your sport, and he's already won in his first race, and we've seen that he can be great on these road courses. So I'm excited for these little Hail Mary picks at the end. I don't think Van Gisbergen's a Hail Mary at all. Like you said, a wild card more for him. If Juan Pablo Montoya manages to win this weekend, I might be incoherent on the next week's podcast. But as we turn now into our final turn, we have an update on the charters for NASCAR. The charter agreement was signed by all but 2 full-time teams, those teams being 23XI and Front Row in a surprise move. We figured 23XI was already going to hold out. Denny Hamlin has been very vocal about how much he does not like the current offer that NASCAR has put in front of him.
Now, Mr. Adam, you've done a little bit of research on this, so in simple terms, break it down. What does that mean?
Okay, so a charter, it was introduced by NASCAR because in the past it was anything you own to field a team, you could put them out there. If you can get a car up to speed and qualify well enough, you can enter a race. And if you enter at Talladega, let's just say, and you do well on the super speedways, you can pull your funds into that, your resources, and then you qualify maybe 30th, and then you run the race, and that's the race you run. But then you go next week, let's just say you go to Darlington, and it's an oval, and you can't quite just soup up a car. I'm not sure how cars work like that, at least in that sense. But let's just say you just can't build a car that can qualify well enough to get into the race. You can't race. You don't get in. So what NASCAR did to try to attract more team owners was set up the charter system where if you have a charter, you are guaranteed a starting spot and you get a cut of the media deal at that time, which I believe was just under $900 million. And it is able to be renegotiated every few years, and NASCAR basically determines what they want to do with that. So NASCAR has 36 charters right now. I believe there are 40 charters total, but NASCAR is holding 4 charters in the event of a new manufacturer entering the sport. So, say Honda wants to, say Dodge wants to come back, say whoever.
Lamborghini, maybe.
Yeah.
Ferrari. We'll see.
Yeah. Get one of those and see how well that's received.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah, but that it gives them something that even if they are able to race every week, so they are guaranteed some kind of payout and their winnings and all that. But also, if they decide to close down, NASCAR's not for them, they're not seeing success, whatever, they can sell this charter on the open market and another team can purchase it. And that we saw that with 2311 where they bought a charter for I believe around 20 million. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say it was around $20 million. We saw that when Spire purchased Live Fast Motorsports charter. That was a huge deal with how much that was. We see Stewart Haas now liquidating their assets,
That's
the
right.
charters included. So 3 charters on the open market. We saw Trackhouse purchase one to field Shane Van Gisbergen full-time next year. And the issue that these drivers have, or these teams have with the charter system, is that they're not permanent. So that means every few years they're going to have to renegotiate the terms, and NASCAR's basically given all the power in this situation because it's their sport and their charters, and they can do and sell and give and take whenever they so please, which is not a great model to have, where you can just have a charter and then suddenly you don't. And also they want a bigger cut of the media rights, the media deal, because as they've said, a lot of owners have said that NASCAR is just not profitable to run, where I believe Rick Hendrick said that he's selling cars just to fund the race team. I think Jeff Gordon said a few years ago that Hendrick hasn't seen a profit in years off of racing strictly. So a lot of these guys are in it just for the love of racing. And for guys like Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, who are in the sport, obviously Denny Hamlin loves racing. He's super competitive. He is also a businessman, Michael Jordan especially. Getting investors like him in is important. But if you're not seeing a return on investment, what's the point of it, basically?
Yeah.
And an analogy I saw was like, if you try to sell someone a house or if you try to sell someone property for a return on investment, would you rather purchase a house, which is permanent, or rent a property, which is obviously you only have it for a limited amount of time? So they are fighting that right now. Some teams have said that they just gave up. Like Rick Hendrick said, we're not going to be happy with it, but that's how negotiations work. We can try again in a few years. One team anonymously, I believe, said that like NASCAR basically twisted their arm on it. And right now, 2311 and Front Row are the only ones who have refused to sign. And they're kind of losing their leverage a bit. But if these charters are not renewed, or if this agreement is not agreed upon by the end of the year, December 31st at midnight, I believe, NASCAR, in theory, could possibly just take their charters and go, these are ours now. We're going to sell them to a team that wants them. And that would not be great for the sport, to take a charter away from Michael Jordan.
No,
But,
no, I wouldn't think so.
no, especially when he's been getting a lot of attention because,
Yeah.
Michael Jordan owns a NASCAR team, and that's getting eyes on the sport because
Yeah.
you're getting basketball fans or Michael Jordan fans in general into NASCAR because he's there. They have a team to root for. So things are odd in that camp, but who knows what's going to happen. I don't see Denny Hamlin just giving in. He seems just... I don't know him personally, obviously, but he just seems like a stubborn guy. And honestly, all the power to him. I'm completely in his camp there, on his side, just giving the owners more power instead of just having one governing body with the ruling over the rest of them. So I hope they can, I don't think they can speak too much on the details, just out of a legal perspective on their negotiations and all that. But it'll be interesting to see how this unravels as we're getting close to the end of the year and that deadline's quickly approaching. So we'll see what 2311 and Front Row does, and we'll see what NASCAR does in the event that they don't sign.
And I'm hopeful it's not too much drama, as we are fans of some of those drivers. We like some of the smaller teams, so just looking down into what's going to be the nitty gritty here of the season. It'll be solved with some grace. We can all only hope so. As I'm liking where the sport is heading, some of these smaller teams trying to rival teams like Hendrick, like Joe Gibbs. It's just making a little bit more of an interest factor for newer fans who may want to try and glom on to some of these younger racers, different teams. And I don't think that's a bad thing. The announcing has been fantastic. Still continuing to give shout outs to Mr. Diffie. I really like these broadcasts and the energy that he brings to a NASCAR race, because it just feels like I'm watching something shorter where you need to be watching all the time. NASCAR races are just so drawn out sometimes. When you think about like a 400-meter dash in the Olympics or a horse race on NBC. It's just something that, the way that the inflection is when you have an announcer broadcasting so emphatically. You're like, oh, wait, I don't want to miss this. I need to watch this. Oh, they're going 3 wide. Oh, I need to watch this right now. And just a lot of good things as we're getting further and further into the playoffs. And I'm hoping that NASCAR is only continuing to build on that. I know we talked about it a lot. You're not the biggest fan of the playoff system. Maybe that's going to be something that will change in the future. But as long as more fans are trying to tune in and people are enjoying it, definitely all good things on that front.
I agree. I said it last week. I don't know if I said it exactly like this, but the reason I get so worked up about over some of these things is because I do love this sport so much, and I just want to see it succeed. I want to see that popularity that it had in the early thousands, where the track bleachers were filled and it was rivaling. I don't want to say rivaling the NFL, because football's king right now.
It's football, yeah. It's been, and in the global sense too. You got so many fans in other parts of the world now. American football has grown to such a high amount of popularity, and it's still different. It's a team sport. It's you're putting a ball into a zone. This is a little bit different in that sense.
Yes, but just seeing the explosion of popularity Formula One has had over the last few years.
You're right. Yep.
If NASCAR had an explosion of popularity like that, I would be over the moon. I just hope. I don't see in its current state it doing that, but if they can get a better car, the car has produced some good racing on the super speedways and the intermediates, but it's the short track racing and the road courses that have caused its biggest problems. I'm hoping that this tire thing really helps them this weekend at Watkins, but that's just all in time to see how that all plays out.
That it is, but it will be an exciting one to look forward to, especially just in the personal sense for us, because we lived up there for a couple years. I do hope during the broadcast they definitely touch upon some of the beauty up there. Maybe some of the leaves are changing colors, so with the broadcast they best be using some of those drones to good effect. What's up, man, before we close it out here?
Before we close it out, just want to say we have officially opened some social media pages, and I'll leave the links to those all in the description if you're on YouTube. But TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, believe we have all of those now.
Yeah.
All up and running. So if you're on YouTube, in the description, I'll make sure to leave links for all of those.
And we definitely need to continue to expand on some of these platforms. I know we want to continue to build on this podcast. It's still very much in its humble beginnings right now. This is only the 4th one, so we're going to try to keep building on this, gaining an audience when the opportunity presents itself. But of course, if you made it this far, thank you again for pulling in to the Palmetto Pit Stop. I'm Tony, here with Adam, and we'll see you next time.